It started with whispers, not dramatic ones, just slightly slower replies to emails. A cold shoulder here, a meeting invite that never arrived. You know the signs. The kind that smell like someone's decided you're guilty of something, but no one tells you what. At first, I thought it was the usual office static. Maybe I'd misread someone's tone. Maybe HR was doing one of their stealth restructurings again, or maybe, wild idea, I was just tired. Then came the Slack messages. Hey, just checking. Did you share that doc with anyone outside? Or, not to be weird, but did you talk to someone from Delta Bridge at the conference? Delta Bridge, our biggest competitor, the Voldemort of consulting. That's when it clicked. They thought I was leaking information. Cue the music. The ridiculous part? I wasn't. Not even a little. I was too busy trying to fix our bloated onboarding system and argue for remote flexibility for newer hires to even think about industry espionage. But that didn't stop the narrative. And the thing of corporate suspicion is, it doesn't need proof. It needs momentum. By the end of the week, my access to shared folders had been temporarily restricted. My name disappeared from an internal project tracker I'd helped build. And my boss, Maggie, a walking spreadsheet with a grudge, stopped looking me in the eye during meetings. Then, Friday afternoon, I got the calendar invite. HR check-in, 4:30 p.m., conference room 6B. Classic. Right before the weekend. Right after most people had already mentally clocked out. That way, whatever happened could quietly cool off by Monday. I walked into 6B with my laptop open and heart closed. Inside were Maggie and someone from HR who looked like he used to work in PR. Well-dressed, vague smiled, all neutral energy. They didn't waste time. We've received some concerning reports, Maggie started. HR guy followed, specifically regarding your communications with Delta Bridge employees over the last quarter. Which communications? I asked. We can't disclose the sources, he said. So, nothing verifiable? Maggie shifted. You've always had a strong personality. Ah, there it was. The vibe had changed. They weren't just accusing me of spying, they were framing it as a cultural issue. HR guy cleared his throat. While we're not formally terminating your employment, we do feel it may be best to part ways. Quietly, with dignity. I almost laughed. Quietly, with dignity. So polite. So absolutely fake. I didn't fight. I said sure. Then I walked out, sat at my desk, and opened Google Docs. And I wrote the most brutal, elegant, petty, empowering resignation letter you've ever read. The title? Resignation Letter, since you already wrote the ending. I didn't name names. I didn't curse. I didn't rant. I just told the truth. About the culture of fear, about the gaslighting, about how mediocrity rewards itself with meetings while the rest of us quietly carry the weight. I posted it on LinkedIn and logged off. I expected maybe 5 likes, 10 if the interns were feeling brave. What I didn't expect, what I couldn't have predicted, was what happened overnight. By morning, the post had 9,000 likes, 2,000 comments, and more resharing than a cat video on caffeine. People I hadn't spoken to since college were tagging me with, and say it louder. Apparently, quietly burning the corporate playbook with grace and bullet points was what the internet had been waiting for. The comments were wild. One woman wrote, open quote, "This is the most polite middle finger I've ever seen." I printed it out. Close quote, a startup CEO commented, open quote, "Hiring this person yesterday." Close quote. Even a VP from my own company posted something like, open quote, "Sometimes culture has to listen to discomfort." Close quote. To which someone replied, open quote, "Buddy, you are the culture." Close quote. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee. It was the first good laugh I'd had in a week. But it got stranger. 2 days after I posted it, my inbox pinged with a message from a name I recognized immediately. Elaine R., Director Strategic Talent, Delta Bridge Consulting. Yes, that Delta Bridge. The one my old employer accused me of cozying up to. The one whose very name had started my professional unraveling. Her message? Open quote, "We read your letter. Not just read it, discussed it in a leadership meeting. Would you be open to a conversation? This isn't a recruiting pitch. Just curiosity." Close quote. My first reaction? Oh, now this is poetic. My second? What do I even say to that? I sat on it for a few hours. Walked around. Watered my plants like I was suddenly a person who gardens under stress. Then I replied, open quote, "Curiosity is a great place to start. I'm available Thursday." Close quote. Thursday came fast. The call was short but sharp. Elaine wasn't playing games. We saw what you wrote. You were articulate, clear. You called out what we've tried to avoid in our own house. I raised an eyebrow. That's surprisingly honest, she shrugged. We've been building too fast. We want to grow better. That takes people who know what dysfunction looks like from the inside and know how to fix it. I waited. Then she said it. We think you're one of those people. Boom. I didn't respond right away. I wanted her to feel the silence. Finally, I said, you do realize your name is the one that got me thrown out of my job, right? She didn't blink. Yes, that irony isn't lost on us. Or me, I added. I'll be direct, she continued. Would you be open to a meeting? Not for a role yet. Just to see if we're aligned. I said yes. Because how do you turn down the plot twist your former employer literally invented? After the call, I got another email. This one from Maggie. Subject line, re-professional courtesy. I didn't even open it. I just imagined her watching the view count tick up, watching the comments pile in, watching me get approached by the company they were so sure I'd been betraying them with. You ever taste karma in your throat? It's minty. The meeting with Delta Bridge wasn't in a glassy high-rise or a power lunch steakhouse. It was a quiet coffee shop in the Arts District, one of those converted warehouse spots with exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and single-origin espresso you can't pronounce without a degree in botany. Elaine was already there when I arrived. No entourage, no clipboard, just her, a mug of something steaming, and a look that said, I've read your soul, and now I'd like to buy you a croissant. Glad you came, she said, sliding me a menu. Try the ginger oat. Sounds weird. Works. We didn't talk jobs. Not at first. She asked about the letter. What made me write it? What I wanted when I hit publish. I told her the truth. I didn't write it to go viral. I wrote it because staying silent made me feel like I was rotting from the inside. She nodded. I get that. Corporate decay is real. Some people survive by becoming part of it. Others burn out. You lit a flare, I smiled. Wasn't trying to be a hero. You weren't, she said. That's why it worked. Then she leaned in. We're not perfect, but we're aware. We're trying, and we want people who've seen the cracks up close. I raised an eyebrow. You mean people who've been accused of espionage? She grinned. Exactly. She slid a tablet across the table, one tab open, a proposed role. Director of Strategic Culture and Internal Systems. I blinked. That's a title? We made it for you. I scrolled. The description read like someone reverse-engineered everything I wasn't allowed to fix at my old company and then dared me to try. You sure about this? I asked. Let's put it this way, she said, sipping her coffee. You're the only person I've ever seen get fired for not working with us and somehow still impress us more than our own team. Tache. I didn't say yes that day. I told her I needed a week. Time to think, to breathe, to not make a rebound decision while still watching Maggie's emails go unread in my inbox. But even as I walked out of that cafe, I felt something shift. Not just opportunity, leverage. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing a company. They were chasing me. Later that night, I posted a follow-up on LinkedIn. Not dramatic, just honest. I wrote, open quote, sometimes the place that breaks you is the place that frees you. Sometimes being accused of disloyalty just means you were loyal to values your company never truly had. Sometimes, if you're lucky, the people who watched you walk away will be the ones who ask you to lead. Close quote. It didn't go viral. Didn't need to. It reached the people who mattered. And one of them, Joe, a junior strategist I used to mentor, commented, open quote, they were scared of you. Now they'll wish they'd listened. Close quote. I liked it. But I didn't reply because I was already writing a new chapter. And this time, I was holding the pen. The day I accepted the offer, I didn't wear a suit. I wore sneakers. Because when you walk into a building you were once accused of betraying, only now as a partner, you don't dress to impress. You dress to remember who you are. Delta Bridge's headquarters was exactly what I expected. Sleek, minimal, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made every meeting feel like a TED Talk. Except this time, I was the one holding the clicker. Elaine met me in the lobby. You look comfortable, she said with a smirk. Occupational therapy, I replied. After a year of being called too formal, she laughed. Let's ruin some systems, shall we? The first few weeks were observation-heavy. I wasn't there to build fast. I was there to watch, to diagnose, to sense the invisible tensions that make or break teams. Who always talks, who never gets credit, which open-door policies are just decorative. And what I found surprised me. Delta Bridge wasn't a utopia, far from it. They had burnout issues, middle management bottlenecks, a bias toward shiny hires from top schools, which created blind spots in real-world execution. But they knew it, and they wanted help. They didn't hire me to wallpaper over dysfunction. They hired me to call it out, loudly, gently, and without apology. So I did. One day, during a leadership sync, someone said, open quote, "We want to make sure no one ever feels like a cog here." Close quote. I raised my hand. Then stop naming projects after machines, I said. Project engine, initiative gearbox. It's subconscious, but it matters. Silence. Then laughter. Then a sticky note on the whiteboard that read, "Name things like humans live here." From then on, I was known as that guy. The one who cared too much about language, feelings, and whether interns got to speak in Q&A sessions. And somehow that became respectable. Meanwhile, my old company, they sent a cease and desist letter. Yes, for reputational damage. The letter arrived via email and certified post. 4 pages of vague threats and legal bluster. I printed it out, brought it to my next one-on-one with Elaine. She read it, then looked at me. Shall we frame it? Or shred it and put it in the office compost bin? We chose both. Half went into the frame. The other half went into a clear compost jar labeled Former Narratives. It now sits on the windowsill in my new office. And yes, I got an office. With a door. With plants. With respect. Not because I demanded it, but because I stopped settling for places that required me to prove I deserved it. Joe, the junior strategist from my old job, messaged me again. Open quote. Saw your new title. Proud doesn't cover it. Close quote. I replied, open quote, you're next. Close quote. Because here's the truth they don't tell you in job interviews. Sometimes getting pushed out is the greatest blessing in disguise. Sometimes being doubted is your clearest signal to bet on yourself. And sometimes the very place that once whispered, he doesn't belong, will find itself quietly wondering how it ever functioned without you. A month into the new job, I did something bold. I invited feedback, anonymously. Yes, real feedback. The kind that HR usually filters through a PowerPoint deck and then buries beneath actionable insights. I sent a link to every department, no titles, no tracking, just one question. Open quote, what's broken that no one talks about? Close quote. Within 24 hours, I had 183 responses. By day 2, over 300. Some were petty. The kombucha tap tastes like betrayal. Fair, but most brutally honest. Open quote. Leadership plays favorites. Close quote. Open quote. We say we care about mental health but reward burnout. Close quote. Open quote. I haven't had a one-on-one with my manager in 6 months and he sits across from me. Close quote. One person wrote, open quote, I feel like I only exist between deadlines. Close quote. That one stayed with me because I'd been that person. Hell, I was that person, just 3 promotions and a viral post ago. I compiled the responses, removed anything identifying, and created a deck called The Things We Whispered. I presented it at an all-hands meeting. No finger-pointing, no dramatic accusations, just quiet truths spoken plainly. When I was done, I said, open quote, this isn't a tear down, it's a map. We can keep walking blind, or we can build better roads. Close quote. For a few seconds, no one said anything. Then the CTO clapped. Then the room followed. And afterward, someone approached me and said, you made it okay to tell the truth. That was the moment I knew I wasn't the spy. I was the mirror they'd been afraid to look into. Meanwhile, over at my former employer, things weren't going as planned. A recruiter friend sent me a screenshot of a post from Maggie. A vague post. The kind dripping with not-so-subtle bitterness. Open quote, in a world of personal branding, we must remember the value of discretion and loyalty. Close quote. I chuckled, then bookmarked it. Because nothing screams discretion like subtweeting your former employees to 1,000 mutual connections. But hey, let them talk. I was too busy building something that worked. Later that week, Delta Bridge's CEO called me in. Read your feedback deck. Impressive. Thank you. I want to publish a version externally. I blinked. Seriously? Transparency's a brand now, he said. Let's show we actually mean it. And just like that, the things we whispered went live on the company blog. Comments rolled in from all over the industry. Open quote, refreshing. Close quote. Open quote, finally, a company admitting it doesn't have it all figured out. Close quote. Open quote, can I send this to my boss? Close quote. Somewhere in that wave of responses, my old company went quiet, real quiet. They'd spent months treating me like a liability. Now, I was a blueprint. And me, I was just getting started. Around this time, I started getting invitations. Not dinner parties, not networking brunches. The real invitations, the ones that slide into your inbox from editors, podcasters, keynote curators, they all started the same way. Open quote, I read your resignation letter. Close quote. It had taken on a life of its own. People weren't just quoting it, they were teaching it. I saw screenshots in HR workshops, heard phrases like lead with clarity or be led by confusion tossed around like I'd written a management Bible. Weirdest of all? One university professor emailed to ask if I'd mind if his MBA class dissected it as a case study in authentic leadership communication. I replied, open quote, sure, but tell them I still microwave leftover noodles in plastic bowls. Let's keep the myth grounded. Close quote. Despite the buzz, I never lost focus. Delta Bridge gave me freedom, not just responsibility. So I started piloting something new, the listening lab. It wasn't flashy. Just a room, one facilitator, and 8 employees from different departments. No hierarchy, no agenda. Just a prompt, open quote, what's one policy here that feels like it was written by someone who's never done your job? Close quote. People lit up. It turned into one of the most talked about programs in the company because for once, people weren't being surveyed, they were being heard. And when leadership saw the changes that resulted, smaller process tweaks, more inclusive workflows, flexible hours for frontline teams, they stopped asking why I'd left my last job. They started asking how to keep me here. One afternoon, as I was prepping for a lab session, I got a Slack ping from an unfamiliar handle. Still reading your letter? Still stinging from it? You were right. It was anonymous. But the tone? I'd bet anything it was Maggie. I didn't respond. Some messages aren't invitations, they're acknowledgments. And some apologies don't need replies. Then came the email that caught me off guard. It was from a junior associate at my old company. Subject, I just handed in my resignation. The body was short. Open quote, I saved your letter. I read it every time I started doubting myself. I finally found the courage. Thank you for going first. Close quote. I stared at it for a while. Not because I was proud, but because I realized something. That letter wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of a permission slip for so many people still stuck in silence. I replied simply, open quote, now go write something better than mine, close quote. That night, I opened the original file, the one titled Resignation Letter since you already wrote the ending. I read it again. I still agreed with every word. But now I understood it wasn't just a mic drop. It was a door. And on the other side, everything I thought I'd lost and everything I never knew I could build. By Q3, something unexpected happened. I was asked to represent Delta Bridge at an industry summit. Yes, the summit. The same one I used to attend as a junior analyst, quietly taking notes in the back row while executives drank bottled self-importance at the front. But this time, my name was on the speaker list. Rewriting the narrative, how culture can't be coached, but must be created. Subtle, right? I arrived at the venue early, just to breathe it in. These things always smell the same: hotel carpet, dry pastries, expensive pens and recycled tote bags. But this year, it didn't smell like anxiety. It smelled like opportunity. I was halfway through a lukewarm coffee when I saw them. 2 of my old coworkers, one from ops, one from legal. They saw me too. And that's when the universe dialed it up, because Maggie walked right past the lobby window. On the phone, still talking with her hands. Still wearing the same brand of power heels she'd clicked across the hallway when I got the talk. She didn't see me, but oh, I saw everything. My panel was mid-afternoon, packed house. The moderator asked great questions. I told real stories. I didn't mention my former employer by name, but let's just say the room knew. At the end, someone asked from the audience, how do you rebuild your reputation when others tried to ruin it? I didn't flinch, by making sure the work that follows speaks louder than the rumor that tried to erase you. That got a quiet from somewhere in the back row. Afterwards, a line of people formed. One person shook my hand and said, I sent your letter to my HR director. Another said, I read it out loud during our exit interview. I smiled, nodded, thanked them. But inside, I was thinking about how I used to wonder if my words had any weight. Now they echoed. That evening, The summit held a networking reception, glass walls. Jazz trio, terrible lighting for introverts. I was on my third mineral water when Maggie finally walked in. She saw me this time. Our eyes met for half a second. She blinked, then turned. It was the most respectful thing she'd ever done for me. I didn't chase her, didn't smirk, didn't raise my glass. I just let it be. Because sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't confrontation. It's being undeniable. Back at my hotel, I got a message from Elaine, open quote, heard you leveled the room. Again, remind me to triple your speaking fee. Close quote. I replied, open quote, I accept payment in Post-its and quiet respect. Close quote. She sent a gif of a mic drop. As I packed my bag to leave the next morning, I looked out over the city skyline. Same buildings, same conference centers, same industry, but I was different. Not louder, not angrier, just clearer. I didn't need validation. I'd earned voice, and now I plan to use it for everyone still stuck in the silence I'd escaped. 2 months after the summit, I got an invitation I never saw coming. It was from a publishing house. Yes, a book deal. Apparently, someone on their editorial board had followed my story from the letter to the panel stage, and now they wanted a manuscript. Not a memoir, necessarily. More like a modern guide to surviving toxic workplaces without losing your soul. Tentative title: Exit Interviews I Never Got to Give. I stared at the email for a long time, not because I didn't want to do it, but because I knew the minute I said yes, it would no longer be my story. It would become theirs, too. Every underpaid genius, every muted voice, every person who ever asked, "Is it me?" when it was clearly the system. So I said yes, and I started writing. Meanwhile, RippleWorks, the listening initiative we started at Delta Bridge, was spreading. Teams in South Africa, India, even an office in Toronto had started replicating the model. Employees who used to clock in and out like background music were now leading, running labs, designing feedback loops, training managers on how not to suck. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And the best part? I didn't have to lead all of it. I just had to get out of the way. Then one day, I got a package. No return address. Inside, a coffee mug. Plain white. No logo. And a note, open quote, "You were right. I should have listened before I lost the voice worth hearing." Close quote. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I knew who it was. I poured a cup of tea into it that afternoon, sat in the quiet of my apartment, and thought about how far I'd come. From whispered accusations to keynote applause, from being silenced to scripting the next chapter. Later that night, Jo, my old intern mentee, called me out of the blue. She'd just landed her first director role. "You were the first person who ever asked me what I wanted," she said. I congratulated her, told her to lead the way she always wished someone else had. Then she said, "I still have your letter printed out." I laughed. "That thing's going to outlive me." "Good," she said. "We'll need it for the next generation." The truth is, I don't regret any of it now. Not the paranoia, not the push-out, not even the silence. Because it gave me the one thing I didn't know I was missing. Proof that clarity isn't about shouting louder. It's about refusing to whisper when it matters most. At 9, I was sitting in a tiny cafe in Lisbon, on a well-earned vacation, finally learning to do nothing, when my phone buzzed with a message that made me laugh out loud. It was from a journalist. Open quote, "Hey, doing a piece on viral resignation stories that actually led to better careers. Yours tops the list." Quick quote, close quote. I stirred my espresso, took a sip, and replied, open quote, "Sure, but only if you let me say something about how the best revenge is writing your own job description." Close quote. They agreed. I sent over a paragraph. Next week, it ran in Wired. Yes, that Wired. The headline? How one resignation letter quietly changed corporate culture. Was it dramatic? Of course. Was it exaggerated? Maybe. But what mattered was that it existed. That somewhere, someone sitting under fluorescent lights, wondering if they were crazy for caring too much, would read it and feel seen. Back at Delta Bridge, my team was growing. Not just in size, but in courage. One of our junior hires, Malik, came to me after a RippleWorks session and said, "I think I can lead one." I said, "You don't need my permission." He smiled. "I know, but it still feels good to hear." That moment reminded me of my own turning point, when I went from trying to survive in silence to realizing I could design the sound instead. Then came the invitation I never expected. An email from a nonprofit think tank attached to the UN's Future of Work Committee. They wanted me to join a virtual roundtable. Topic: Rewriting exit culture in modern organizations. I stared at the screen and laughed, not because it was funny, but because this was the same world that once told me, maybe keep your feedback offline next time. Now, they wanted my insight on how to leave. You really can't make this stuff up. At the roundtable, I said the thing that surprised even me. Open quote: an exit isn't the end of loyalty. Sometimes it's the most honest version of it, because if you love what something could be more than what it is, leaving can be an act of faith. Close quote. There was a pause. Then someone whispered into their mic, I needed to hear that. I didn't know who. Didn't need to. Because the point wasn't to be heard by everyone. It was to be heard by the right ones. And after all this time, that was finally happening. I never thought I'd say this, but I don't miss my old job. Not because it was terrible. Not because the coffee was bad. Though let's be honest, it was. But because what I have now isn't just a new role, it's a new rhythm. Every morning, I open my laptop and remember that I'm not chasing approval anymore. I'm building environments where people don't have to beg for it. That's the real shift. And it all started with one letter, one moment of quiet rage and sharp clarity. One decision to stop asking, will they see me? And start asking, what happens when I stop hiding? It's funny how it comes full circle. Last week, I sat across from a new hire during orientation. She was bright, curious, the kind of person who over-prepares for icebreaker games. She kept glancing at me like I was familiar. Halfway through lunch, she said, sorry, but are you that guy? The resignation letter guy? I nodded, half laughing. Guilty. She smiled like she just confirmed a myth. I saved a screenshot of your post, read it before every interview, reminded me to never shrink myself. I nearly dropped my fork. Not because I was flattered, but because she didn't say it inspired me. She said it reminded me. That's the thing. The best stories don't teach, they remind. They tap us on the shoulder and say, you've known this the whole time. Now go live like it. So here I am, still drinking tea, still asking questions that make people shift in their chairs, still writing policies in plain English and reminding managers that silence isn't a success metric. The difference? Now they listen. Because now when I speak, it's not from bitterness, it's from freedom. Because walking away didn't ruin me, it revealed me. And I walked right into the life I was told I wasn't ready for, only to discover I was the blueprint the whole time.